Taman could not remember the last time he had slept through the night without waking up screaming. The dreams were always the same: explosions, fire, the faces of soldiers under his command who never made it home. He had been a captain in the Terran Defense Corps for 12 years, and those 12 years had carved deep lines into his face and deeper scars into his mind. The war was over now. Humanity had won, though Taman was not sure what they had won exactly. The enemy aliens had surrendered, their worlds were occupied, and the killing had stopped. But the noise in his head never stopped. Even in the silence of his apartment on Earth, he could hear the screaming of ship engines, the crackling of radio communications, the thunder of weapons fire. The doctors called it combat stress disorder. They gave him pills and told him to rest. The pills did nothing. After 3 months of sitting in his apartment staring at walls and jumping at every sudden sound, Taman made a decision. He needed to get away from everything. Away from Earth with its billions of people and its constant noise. Away from the military bases and the memorial services and the reporters who wanted to interview war heroes. He needed silence. Real silence. The kind of silence that did not exist anywhere near human civilization. He searched through old star charts and found what he was looking for. The silence sector. It was called that because nothing happened there. No stars were born. No planets had life. No ships passed through. There was just empty space and darkness and quiet. At the edge of the sector, orbiting a dead planet, was a listening post called HFY Station. It had been built decades ago to monitor deep space signals, but now only one person lived there. Taman bought passage on a cargo ship heading in that direction. The journey took 3 weeks. He spent most of that time in his cabin, avoiding the other passengers and their questions. When they finally arrived at HFY Station, the captain seemed relieved to see him go. The station was smaller than Taman had expected. Just a ring of metal modules attached to a central hub, all of it spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Docking clamps grabbed his transport pod and pulled it into the airlock. When the doors opened, a woman was waiting for him. Her name was Mirai. She was tall and thin with gray streaks in her black hair despite looking no older than 40. Her eyes were sharp and suspicious as they studied him. She wore a comfortable jumpsuit covered in coffee stains, and her hands were marked with old chemical burns. "Captain Taman," she said. Her voice was flat, neither welcoming nor hostile. "You sent a message asking to stay here for a while. I said yes because the station needs the money. But I need to know why you are here. This is not a vacation spot." "I am looking for quiet," Taman said simply. "I heard this was the quietest place in human space." Mirai studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You are a soldier. I can tell by the way you stand. Combat stress? Yes, I understand. I came here to get away from things too. Different things, but I understand." She turned and started walking down a corridor. "Follow me. I will show you where you can stay." The station was old and worn. The walls were scuffed and some of the lights flickered. But it was clean and well maintained. Mirai led him to a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window looking out into space. The window was the best part. Through it, Taman could see stars scattered across the darkness like grains of salt on black cloth. They did not twinkle here because there was no atmosphere to distort the light. They just shone, steady and cold and silent. "The observation deck is down that corridor," Mirai said, pointing. "You can spend as much time there as you want. I do my work in the lab and the control room. I will not bother you if you do not bother me. Meals are in the common area at 8, 13, and 1900 hours. You can eat alone in your room if you prefer." "Thank you," Taman said. Mirai paused at the door. "People come here to forget things. I will not ask about your past if you do not ask about mine. Deal?" "Deal." She left him alone. Taman unpacked his few belongings and then went to the observation deck. It was a dome of transparent material jutting out from the station's main hull. Inside was a single comfortable chair. Taman sat down and looked out at the void. For the first time in months, he felt something like peace. The days blended together in a peaceful routine. Taman would wake up, eat a simple breakfast, and then spend hours in the observation deck. Sometimes he read books on his tablet. Sometimes he just looked at the stars. Mirai kept to herself most of the time. Occasionally, they would eat meals together and exchange a few words, but neither of them pushed for conversation. It was nice. Slowly, the noise in Taman's head began to fade. The nightmares came less often. His hands, which had shaken constantly for months, grew steady again. He started to feel like himself again, like the person he had been before the war turned him into something harder and colder. 2 weeks passed this way. Quiet weeks. Healing weeks. Then, on the 15th night, everything changed. Tamin was in the observation deck, half asleep in the chair, when he heard it. A sound, but not a normal sound. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It resonated through the station's walls, through his bones, through his very thoughts. It was like singing, but no human throat could make sounds like these. The notes were too complex, too layered. Multiple harmonies wove together in patterns that seemed to tell stories without using words. He sat up straight, his heart suddenly pounding. His combat instincts kicked in and he looked around for threats. But there was nothing. Just the observation deck and the stars beyond. The singing continued. It was beautiful and strange and a little bit frightening. Tamin could almost understand it, as if his brain was trying to translate something beyond language. He felt emotions in the music, loneliness, hope, a desperate need to be heard, and underneath it all an ancient sadness that made his chest ache. He ran to the control room. Mirai was already there, standing in front of her equipment with her mouth hanging open. Screens displayed wave patterns and frequency analyses. Numbers scrolled past faster than Tamin could read them. Every sensor on the station was going crazy. "What is that?" Tamin demanded. Mirai did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the screens. "I do not know. I have never seen anything like this. The sound is not being transmitted through radio waves or any normal medium. It is just happening, like the universe itself decided to start singing. Where is it coming from?" She tapped a screen and brought up a sensor map. A bright point of light pulsed on the display directly below the station. "The planet. It is coming from Yomra, the dead planet we are orbiting." "That is impossible," Tamin said. "You told me nothing lives there. Nothing has lived there for millions of years. I know what I told you, but look at the sensors. The sound is definitely coming from the surface. And there is more." Her fingers moved across the controls. "Thermal readings. Something down there is producing massive amounts of heat. Something big." The singing swelled, growing louder and more insistent. Tamin felt it pulling at him, calling to him specifically. He could not explain how he knew this, but he was absolutely certain. Whatever was making that sound, it wanted him to come. "I need to go down there," he said. Mirai finally looked at him. "Are you insane? We have no idea what that is. It could be dangerous." "It is not dangerous," Tamin said. He did not know how he knew this either, but he was sure of it. "It is calling for help." "Captain, I cannot let you—" "I am not asking for permission. I am telling you what I am going to do." His voice was calm but firm. It was the voice he had used to give orders to his soldiers during the war. "Prepare the shuttle. I am going to the surface." Mirai stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You military types are all the same. Stubborn and stupid." But she started preparing the shuttle anyway. As Tamin headed to the docking bay, the singing grew even stronger. It filled his mind now, pushing away the last remnants of the war noise that had haunted him for so long. For the first time in years, Tamin felt like he had a purpose again. Not a military purpose. Something else. Something he did not understand yet but needed to discover. The soldier who had come searching for silence had found something far stranger, and he was about to discover that some songs were meant to be heard across millions of years. The shuttle shook as it entered the atmosphere of Yomra. Tamin gripped the control stick tightly, his eyes fixed on the displays showing him data about the planet below. The atmosphere was thin and toxic, barely thick enough to breathe even with assistance. The temperature readings were extreme, swinging from freezing cold to burning hot in different regions. Everything about this planet screamed that nothing should be alive here. Yet the singing continued, stronger than ever now that he was closer to the source. Mirai's voice crackled through the radio. "Tamin, I am still picking up those thermal signatures. Whatever is down there is putting out enough heat to melt metal." "Are you sure about this?" "No," Tamin admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." The shuttle broke through the last layer of clouds and Tamin saw the surface of Yomra for the first time. His breath caught in his throat. The entire planet looked like it had been turned into glass. The surface was smooth and reflective, broken only by massive craters and cracks that ran for hundreds of kilometers. In some places, the glass was clear enough that he could see deep into the planet's crust. In other places, it was dark and opaque, stained with minerals or ancient ash. "This was not natural," Tamin whispered. Something did this. Long-range scans suggest nuclear weapons, Mireille replied. Massive ones. Enough to fuse the entire planetary surface. Whoever fought here millions of years ago, they fought until they destroyed everything. Taman guided the shuttle toward the source of the singing. It led him to a crater near the planet's equator. The crater was huge, at least 20 kilometers across and several kilometers deep. As he descended toward it, his sensors started screaming warnings about radiation and heat. He ignored them. The shuttle's shielding would protect him. Probably, he landed on a flat section of glass near the crater's edge. Through the cockpit window, he could see deeper into the crater. There was light down there. Not reflected sunlight, but a glow coming from within the crater itself. Red and orange and white, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Taman put on his environmental suit and checked the seals twice. The suit would provide oxygen and protect him from the toxic atmosphere and radiation. It would also keep him from freezing or cooking, depending on which part of the planet he was standing on. He grabbed a hand scanner and a flare gun, not because he thought he would need weapons, but because old habits died hard. The airlock cycled and he stepped out onto the surface of Yomra. The glass beneath his boots was smooth and warm. The sky above was a sickly yellow color, thick with dust and chemicals. In the distance, he could see mountains of glass rising like frozen waves. The singing surrounded him now, so loud and clear that he could feel it in his chest. It was not coming through his radio or through the air. It was simply there, as fundamental as gravity. He walked to the edge of the crater and looked down. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. They were enormous. Each one was easily the size of a cargo ship, maybe larger. Their bodies glowed with internal light, pulsing slowly between red and white hot. They looked like they were made of crystal and fire combined. Translucent shells containing roiling plasma and energy. Through their transparent forms, Taman could see complex structures that might have been organs, or might have been technology. It was impossible to tell where biology ended and machine began. Dragons. The word came to his mind unbidden. They looked like the dragons from Earth's old myths. But these were real, and they were made of light and heat and something beyond his understanding. There were 5 of them in the crater, their massive forms barely moving. Their eyes, if they were eyes, were swirls of white-hot fusion that tracked his movement as he stood at the crater's edge. The singing came from them. All 5 of them sang together in perfect harmony, their song reaching out into the void of space, calling for someone to hear. Taman's hand scanner was going crazy. The readings made no sense. The creatures were putting out temperatures that should have melted them and everything around them. They were radioactive enough to kill him in seconds if not for his suit's shielding. They should not exist. They violated every law of biology he knew, but they were here. They were real. And they were looking at him. One of the dragons, the largest one, moved. Its head lifted slowly and turned to face him directly. Taman felt the weight of its gaze like a physical force. He should have been terrified. Part of him was terrified, but a larger part of him felt something else. Recognition. As if he had been waiting his whole life for this moment without knowing it. The singing changed. The harmonies shifted and focused, becoming more directed. The other 4 dragons continued their slow, endless song. But the large one was singing something different now, something specifically for him. Taman's translator device built into his suit's computer suddenly activated. It had been silent until now because there was nothing to translate. But now words began appearing on his helmet's display. The translation was rough and uncertain but readable. The one who hears. The quiet seeker, come. The message repeated over and over. The dragon wanted him to come closer. Taman checked his suit's power levels and radiation shielding. He had maybe 30 minutes before the exposure became dangerous, even with protection. It should be enough time. He hoped. He started climbing down into the crater. The glass walls were steep but not impossible to navigate. He moved carefully, testing each foothold before putting his weight on it. The heat increased with every meter he descended. His suit's cooling system kicked into high gear, working hard to keep him from cooking inside the armor. As he got closer to the dragons, he could see more details. Their crystalline shells were covered in patterns that might have been writing, or might have been decorative. Their plasma bodies moved constantly, flowing and churning like liquid fire contained in glass bottles. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The large dragon watched him approach. When he was about 50 meters away, close enough to feel the wash of heat from its body even through his suit, it moved again. One massive limb, like a wing made of crystal and light, extended toward him. Not threatening, inviting. Taman walked forward until he was standing directly in front of the dragon. This close, he could see his own reflection in its crystalline surface, distorted and small. The dragon's eye, a whirlpool of fusion fire, stared down at him. He felt like an insect being examined by a scientist. The translator worked again. More words appeared. We have waited, sung for 3 million cycles. Hoped someone would hear. Hoped someone would understand. You are the first. You are the one we sang for. Taman found his voice, though it came out shaky. I do not understand. How did you know I would come? How did you know humans even existed? The dragon's song became sad, filled with a loneliness so deep it made Taman want to cry. More words formed on his display. Time is strange. We see forward and backward. We knew your kind would rise. We knew you would make the same mistakes we made. We knew one of you would come searching for silence and find us instead. We have been waiting for you, Taman of Earth. We have been waiting to share our warning. Warning? Warning about what? The dragon's eye flared brighter. Suddenly Taman's vision went white. He was no longer standing in the crater. He was somewhere else. Somewhere else when he saw a world of green and blue, beautiful and alive. He saw creatures that might have been the dragons before they became energy and crystal. They were flesh and blood then, with wings that caught the sunlight and scales that shimmered like rainbows. They built cities of elegant towers. They flew between worlds in ships that looked like art. Then he saw the war. He did not understand what started it or who the enemy was. He just saw the fire, weapons that turned entire continents to ash, ships that fell from the sky like burning stars. The dragons fought with everything they had. They transformed themselves, gave up their flesh to become beings of pure energy so they could fight longer and harder. They won their war, but in winning they lost everything else. The vision faded. Taman was back in the crater, shaking and sweating inside his suit. Tears ran down his face, though he did not remember starting to cry. You destroyed yourselves, he whispered. Yes, we won every battle. We killed every enemy. We turned ourselves into living weapons, and when the war was over, we found we could not change back, could not die, could not move forward. We became trapped between life and death, unable to let go, unable to continue. We have been singing for 3 million years, hoping someone would hear, hoping someone would learn from our mistake before it was too late. Taman looked at the 5 dragons, seeing them differently now, not as monsters or miracles, but as ghosts. The last remnants of a civilization that had destroyed itself in the name of victory. Why me, he asked. Why did your song call to me specifically? The dragon's eye dimmed slightly, becoming almost gentle. Because you understand war. You have fought and killed and lost people you cared about. You came here searching for silence because the noise of war still echoes in your mind. You are at a crossroads, Taman of Earth. Your kind is at a crossroads. You can learn from us and choose a different path, or you can make our mistakes again. The song calls to those who can hear it, and you heard. Taman stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything. His mind felt full to bursting with questions and implications and fears about the future. Finally, he asked the simplest question. What do you want from me? The dragon song swelled again, joined by the other 4, their harmonies intertwined, creating something that was both beautiful and mournful. Listen, the translated word said. Remember, and when the time comes, choose wisely. That is all we ask. That is all we have ever asked. Taman returned to the shuttle as his suit's power reserves dropped below 20%. His mind was spinning with everything he had seen and heard. The dragons watched him climb out of the crater, their song following him all the way back to the shuttle. Even after he sealed the airlock and started the ascent back to Yanhua Station, he could still hear them. The song had gotten inside his head and would not leave. Mireille was waiting in the docking bay when he arrived. Her face was pale and worried. You were down there for 2 hours. I thought you were dead. Your radiation exposure is at dangerous levels. Get to the medical bay now. Taman let her guide him to the small medical bay and inject him with anti-radiation medication. She ran scanners over him, checking for damage. While she worked, he told her everything. About the dragons. About their war. About the warning they had sung across 3 million years of time. Mireille listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat down heavily on a medical cot and stared at the wall. Energy beings. Actual energy beings. I spent 20 years studying alien life, and I never imagined something like this was possible. They were biological once, Taman said. They changed themselves to fight their war, and then they could not change back. That is the saddest thing I have ever heard. Mirai was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to her laboratory. I need to analyze the recordings. I need to understand how they communicate. This is the most important discovery in human history, and we are the only two people who know about it. Over the following days, Mirai worked around the clock studying the dragon's song. Taemin went back to the surface 3 more times, always staying longer despite the radiation risk. Each time the large dragon shared more with him. Not just visions of their past, but feelings and concepts that had no words in any human language. The weight of eternal loneliness. The horror of becoming something that could not die. The desperate hope that their suffering might mean something to someone, somewhere. The other 4 dragons never communicated directly with him. They just sang their endless song, casting it out into the universe like a message in a bottle thrown into an infinite ocean. But the large dragon, who Taemin started thinking of as the elder, seemed almost grateful for the company. How much longer can you survive like this? Taemin asked during his 4th visit. The elder's eye pulsed slowly. We are dying. Slowly, yes, but dying. We have been dying for 1,000,000 years. Finding you has accelerated the process. Knowing our song has finally been heard, we can let go now. Soon we will fade completely. I am sorry, Taemin said. He surprised himself by meaning it. These beings had lived for longer than human civilization had existed. Their deaths should have been meaningless to him. But they were not. Do not be sorry. We are ready. We have been ready for a very long time. Back on the station, Mirai made a breakthrough. She had been analyzing the structure of the dragon's song and discovered something remarkable. It is not random. It is highly structured information encoded in the frequency patterns, like data storage but biological. Or maybe beyond biological. I think the song contains their entire history. Every memory of their civilization is stored in the patterns. Can you decode it? Taemin asked. Some of it, maybe, if I had a few years and better equipment. She looked at him with intense eyes. Taemin, we need to report this to Earth. This discovery is too important to keep secret. Scientists need to study this. Historians, linguists, everyone. This could change everything we understand about life and evolution. No. Taemin said firmly. What? Why not? Because I know what will happen. The military will come. Corporate research teams will come. They will turn this planet into a laboratory. They will study the dragons like specimens, try to harvest their energy, try to replicate what they are. The dragons did not wait 3,000,000 years to become a power source for humanity. Mirai looked frustrated. So we just sit on the most important discovery ever made? That is not right either. I am not saying forever. I am saying we wait. We learn what we can first. We make sure we understand their message before we share it. Otherwise, people will only see what the dragons are, not what they are trying to tell us. They argued about it for hours. Mirai wanted to share the discovery immediately. Taemin insisted on waiting. In the end, they compromised. They would take 3 more weeks to gather data and understand the dragon's message better. Then they would report to Earth authorities. 3 weeks to try to learn 3,000,000 years of wisdom. During those weeks, Taemin spent more time with the dragons than on the station. His radiation exposure went far beyond safe levels, but the medication kept him alive and functioning. The elder shared more visions with him. He saw the dragon's civilization at its height. Their art, their science, their philosophy. He saw how they had spread across multiple star systems, building wonders that humanity could not even imagine yet. He also saw how it all fell apart. The war started over something small, a dispute about resources on a border world. It should have been resolved through negotiation. Instead, both sides chose pride over peace. They escalated. They developed new weapons. They transformed themselves into more efficient killers. By the time they realized what they had done, it was too late. The war had consumed everything. Your kind is approaching the same crossroads, the elder told him. You have won your recent war. You feel strong, powerful. You think you can solve any problem through force. This is the beginning of the path we took, the path that led here. Humanity is different, Taemin said, though he was not sure he believed it. Every species thinks they are different. Every species thinks they will be the ones to use power wisely. Few actually do. That is why we sing. That is why we wait, hoping that someone somewhere will hear and understand and choose better than we did. On his 6th visit, something changed. Taman arrived to find the dragons dimmer than before. Their crystalline shells had developed cracks. The heat they produced had decreased noticeably. They were fading faster now. "What is happening?" he asked the elder. "We told you. We are dying. Finding you, sharing our story. It has fulfilled our purpose. We can rest now. How long do you have?" "Days, maybe less." Panic seized Taman. "Wait, I have not learned everything yet. There is still so much I do not understand. Mirai needs more time to decode your song." You need nothing more," the elder interrupted gently. "You have heard our warning. You understand what we were and what we became. That is enough. The rest is up to you and your kind. But, Taman of Earth, we have one final gift to offer you. One last choice to make." The other 4 dragons stirred for the first time since Taman had arrived. They turned their great eyes toward him and their song changed, becoming focused and intense. The elder's eye blazed brighter. "We can give you our memory, all of it. 3 million years of experience, knowledge, culture, history, everything we were and everything we learned. We can transfer it into your mind, make you a living repository of our civilization. You would carry us forward. You would become the bridge between our warning and your kind's future." Taman felt cold despite the heat radiating from the dragons. "What would that do to me?" "It would change you, fundamentally. You would still be Taman, but you would also be us. Your body would change, adapting to hold the energy of our consciousness. You would become something between human and dragon, something new. Would I survive it? Maybe, probably, we cannot be certain. The weight of 3 million years of memory might be too much for a human mind. You might lose yourself in the vastness of what we are, or you might emerge stronger, transformed, carrying our legacy forward. And if I refuse, then we fade and our knowledge fades with us. Your kind will continue on their path with only the vague warning you carry. It might be enough. It might not. We will not know, but the choice is yours. We will not force this burden upon you." Taman stood in the crater surrounded by dying gods and thought about his life. He thought about the war he had fought and the soldiers he had lost. He thought about the nightmares that had driven him to this forgotten corner of space. He thought about humanity and its future, and whether he had the right to make this choice for everyone. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I need a promise from you. Your memories, your knowledge, they stay with me until humanity is ready for them. I will not let your civilization become just another data file in some military research lab. Your warning will be heard and understood, but on my terms. Can you accept that?" The elder's song became warm, almost affectionate. "We have waited 3 million years. We trust you to do what is right. That is why the song called to you specifically, because you are someone who can be trusted with this burden." Mirai's voice crackled through Taman's radio. She had been monitoring his communications from the station. "Taman, do not do this. You do not know what it will do to you. Let me come down there. Let us think about this." "There is no time to think," Taman said. "They are dying now. If I am going to do this, it has to be now. Then do not do it. Come back to the station. We can report this to Earth and they will die before anyone gets here. And humanity will learn nothing, except that there were once beings of energy on a dead planet. That is not enough, Mirai. This is bigger than me, bigger than both of us." He looked at the elder. "I accept. Give me your memory." The 5 dragons began to sing together in perfect unity. Their song rose in volume and complexity, becoming something that transcended sound. Taman felt it enter his mind like a flood of light. He fell to his knees as 3 million years of memory crashed into his consciousness. He experienced the first flight of the dragon's ancestors, the joy of discovery as they reached for the stars, the pride of creation as they built their civilization, the horror of war, the transformation from flesh to energy, the endless lonely vigil. It was too much. No human mind was meant to hold this much information, this much life, this much time. Taman felt himself fracturing under the weight of it. He was going to die or go insane or both. But then he felt the elder's presence supporting him, helping him organize the flood of memory into something manageable, showing him how to store the vast knowledge without losing himself, teaching him how to be both human and dragon at once. When Taman opened his eyes again, he was glowing. Taman woke up in the medical bay of Yanhua Station. Every nerve in his body felt like it was on fire. He tried to sit up and found that his muscles did not respond the way they used to. Everything felt different, wrong, changed. Mirai was beside him immediately, pushing him back down onto the medical cot. "Do not move yet. Your body has been through incredible stress. I barely got you back to the shuttle before you passed out. You have been unconscious for 2 days. The dragons? Taemin's voice came out strange. There were harmonics in it that had not been there before, undertones that made Mireille wince. Gone. They faded completely about an hour after I brought you back. The crater is empty now, just glass and cooling ash. Whatever they were, they are not there anymore. She paused. But I think they are in you now. Taemin managed to sit up despite her protests. He looked down at his hands and gasped. His skin was glowing faintly with an internal light, not bright enough to illuminate the room, but visible in the dim medical bay. When he concentrated, the glow increased. When he relaxed, it faded. He could control it. What happened to me? I was hoping you could tell me. Mireille ran a scanner over him and showed him the results. Your body temperature is running 6 degrees higher than normal human range. Your cells are producing energy in a way I have never seen before. It is like you have a miniature fusion reactor inside you, but that should not be possible. The radiation should kill you, but instead your body seems to be absorbing it and using it as fuel. Taemin closed his eyes and searched inside himself. The memories were there, all 3 million years of them. The Elder had organized them into layers like a vast library in his mind. He could access any memory at will, but they did not overwhelm him. He was still himself. Still Taemin. But now he was also something more. He could feel the dragon's knowledge flowing through his thoughts. Their understanding of energy and matter, of time and space, of life and death. He understood things about the universe that no human had ever understood before. And beneath it all, he felt the weight of their warning. The certainty that humanity was approaching the same crossroads that had destroyed them. We need to leave this station, Taemin said suddenly. Others will come soon. What? Why would others come? We have not told anyone about the dragons. We do not need to. I can feel it. The dragon's song is fading now that they are gone, but it was broadcasting across space for 3 million years. Other species heard it. Other civilizations detected it. They have been afraid to come here because the dragons were dangerous and alien. But now that the song has stopped, they will come to investigate. We have maybe a week before the first ships arrive. Mireille stared at him. How do you know that? Because I remember. The dragons knew this would happen. It is part of why they waited for someone to hear them. They knew that once they faded, this place would become a place of interest. We need to leave before we become specimens for whoever arrives first. But they did not get a week. 3 days later, the station's sensors detected incoming ships. Mireille's face went pale as she read the identification codes. They are human ships. Terran Defense Corps, military vessels. How did they find us? Taemin felt a cold certainty settle over him. Someone monitored our communications. Someone heard us talking about the dragons. The military always monitors the frontier stations. He was right. Within hours, a dozen warships surrounded Yonhua Station. Marines in combat armor docked with the station and took control. The commanding officer was a stern-faced admiral named Doyon. Taemin recognized him from his military service. They had fought together in the border wars years ago. Captain Taemin, Doyon said, his voice formal and cold, you and Dr. Mireille are under military detention. You will surrender all data and recordings related to the energy beings discovered on the planet below. You will submit to debriefing and medical examination. Resistance will be considered treason. Hello to you too, Doyon, Taemin said dryly, still as friendly as ever. Doyon's expression did not change. This is not a social visit. You have made first contact with an alien species and failed to report it immediately. That is a violation of protocol and law. More importantly, you have been exposed to unknown energies that have clearly changed you. We detected the radiation signatures from orbit. You are a potential hazard. The dragons are dead, Mireille protested. They faded away days ago. There is nothing left to study except empty glass. Then there is nothing for you to worry about, Doyon replied. We will investigate the planet and verify your claims. In the meantime, you will both be transported to a military facility for debriefing. Taemin felt anger rising in him. Not just his own anger, but the righteous fury of a civilization that had destroyed itself through military thinking. You will turn this into a weapon. That is what you do. You will study the dragon's energy, try to replicate it, try to make humanity into living weapons just like they did, and you will make the same mistakes. That is not your decision to make, Doyon said. He signaled to the Marines. Take them to the detention cells carefully. Do not harm them, but do not let them access any computer systems or communications. The Marines moved forward. Taemin stood up from the chair where he had been sitting. He felt the dragon energy flowing through his body, responding to his emotions. His skin began to glow brighter. The temperature in the room increased noticeably. "I am not going with you," Taman said quietly. Doyen's eyes narrowed. "That was not a request, Captain. And this is not a refusal. It is a fact. You cannot hold me. You cannot contain what I have become." One of the Marines raised a weapon. Taman moved without thinking. The dragon knowledge guided his actions. He became intangible, his body shifting into a state between matter and energy. The weapon's stun blast passed harmlessly through him. He solidified again a moment later, standing in a different part of the room. The Marines stared in shock. Doyen's face remained calm, but his hand moved to his sidearm. "Stand down, Captain. We do not want to hurt you, but we will if necessary." "You cannot hurt me," Taman said. It was not a boast. It was simply true. He could feel the energy in his body, ready to respond to any threat. He could become intangible again. He could increase his temperature until anything that touched him would melt. He could do things he did not yet fully understand. Capabilities buried in the dragon memories that he had not had time to explore. He had become something that human weapons could not touch. But he did not want to fight. Fighting was what had destroyed the dragons. Violence and escalation and the refusal to step back from conflict. He had their memories now. He knew where that path led. "Mirai," he said, not taking his eyes off Doyen and the Marines, "you should go with them. Tell them what you learned. Share your research, but do not tell them about me, not yet. Not until I understand what I have become. Taman, please. Trust me." Mirai looked torn. Finally, she nodded. "Be careful, and come back when you can." Taman shifted into intangibility again and walked through the wall before anyone could react. He moved through the station like a ghost, passing through solid matter as easily as walking through air. The Marines could not track him. Their sensors could not lock onto him. He was something beyond their understanding now. He reached the docking bay where the military ships were attached to the station. He studied them for a moment, feeling the dragon knowledge analyzing their design and systems. Then he walked through the hull of the nearest ship and emerged into space. The void did not kill him. He had not bothered with an environmental suit because some instinct told him he did not need one. The dragon energy sustained him, creating a field around his body that held air and warmth. He could not breathe, but he did not need to breathe anymore. Not the way humans did. His body was processing energy directly from the space around him, from the radiation of distant stars, from the fabric of reality itself. He was flying, not with wings or thrust, but through pure will and energy manipulation. The dragon knowledge showed him how, guiding his transformation into something that could survive in the vacuum of space. Behind him, alarms blared on Yanhua Station. Ships began powering up their weapons and sensors, trying to track him, but Taman was already accelerating away, faster than any pursuit could follow. He headed deeper into the silence sector, toward the empty spaces where no one would find him. He needed time to understand what he had become. Time to process 3 million years of memory and knowledge. Time to figure out how to use the dragon's gift without making their mistakes. As he flew through the darkness, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The dragons had chosen him for a reason. They had given him their warning, their knowledge, their very essence. Now it was up to him to decide what to do with it. Behind him, Admiral Doyen stood in the command center of Yanhua Station and watched the energy signature disappear from his sensors. He turned to his officers with a grim expression. "Find him. Use every resource we have. That man is now the most valuable and most dangerous individual in human space. He cannot be allowed to operate without supervision." But deep down, Doyen knew they would not find Taman unless he wanted to be found. Whatever the former captain had become, he was beyond human control now. Mirai watched from the detention cell where they had locked her. Through the small window she could see the stars. Somewhere out there, Taman was flying alone through the void, carrying the memories of a dead civilization and trying to save humanity from their fate. She whispered a prayer to God she did not believe in. "Stay safe, you stubborn fool, and figure out what those dragons wanted from us before it is too late." In the emptiness of space, Taman heard her somehow. The dragon senses were sharper than human ones. He could feel emotional resonance across vast distances. He could sense the concern and fear and hope radiating from the station behind him. He would come back eventually. When he understood what he was, when he knew how to carry the dragon's warning to humanity, without it being twisted into something dark. When he was ready to be the bridge between what humans were and what they might become. But not yet, not yet. For now, the soldier who had sought silence flew through the quiet void, burning with inner fire, carrying 3 million years of memory, and trying to learn how to save his species from themselves. 50 years passed. Taman spent the first year alone in the void, learning to control his new nature. He practiced becoming solid and intangible. He learned to regulate the heat his body produced so he could walk among humans without burning them. He explored the vast library of dragon memories, spending months living through their experiences and understanding their culture. The knowledge was overwhelming at times. He would lose himself for days in ancient memories, forgetting he was human at all. But slowly he learned to balance both parts of himself. He was Taman, the soldier who had sought silence, and he was also the keeper of dragon wisdom, the last living record of a civilization that had destroyed itself. When he finally felt ready, he returned to human space. He appeared first in small frontier colonies, places far from Earth and the core worlds. He would arrive unannounced, walking through walls to bypass security and ask to speak with the leaders. At first, people reacted with fear or hostility. A glowing man who could walk through walls and survive in space was not something anyone knew how to handle. But Taman was patient. He spoke calmly and never threatened violence. He told them about the dragons, about the war that had consumed a civilization, about the choice humanity faced between wisdom and destruction. Some people listened. Most did not. They called him crazy or dangerous or both. Security forces tried to capture him. Scientists tried to study him. Religious groups tried to worship him. Taman refused all of them. He would deliver his message and leave, moving on to the next colony, the next world, the next group of humans who might listen. The military hunted him for years. Admiral Doyon, now promoted to fleet commander, made capturing Taman his personal mission. He sent task forces to intercept him. He set traps. He tried to predict where Taman would appear next. But Taman could sense the intent behind military movements through his dragon senses. He always knew when soldiers were coming and was never where they expected him to be. Mirai was released from military custody after 2 years of interrogation. She had told them everything she knew about the dragons except for one thing. She never told them about the full extent of Taman's transformation. She never told them that he carried the complete consciousness of an alien civilization inside his mind. Let them think he was just a man with strange powers. The truth was bigger and more important than military research. She became a professor at a university on Earth, teaching xenolinguistics and alien psychology. She never saw Taman again during those years, but she heard stories. The glowing man who appeared in war zones and spoke of peace. The living ghost who walked through walls to reach prisoners and political leaders. The prophet who glowed like a star and warned of humanity's future. Some people called him a terrorist. Others called him a saint. Most just called him insane. But slowly, very slowly, people began to listen. A mining colony on the edge of human space faced a territorial dispute with an alien species. Both sides were preparing for war. Taman appeared in the middle of the peace negotiations that everyone knew would fail. He showed both sides visions of the Dragon War. He let them feel the weight of 3 million years of regret. The negotiations succeeded. War was avoided. A corporate executive planned to deploy a new weapon system that would have killed millions. Taman appeared in her office at night and showed her what weapons did to civilizations in the long run. She canceled the project and resigned. A terrorist group prepared to detonate nuclear devices on Earth. Taman found them before they could act. He did not hurt them. He simply showed them the glass surface of Yomra and let them understand what nuclear war truly meant. They turned themselves in. News of these interventions spread. Taman became famous and infamous in equal measure. Documentaries were made about him. Religions formed around him. Scientists published papers trying to explain what he was. Philosophers debated whether he was helping humanity or threatening its free will. Taman ignored it all. He just kept moving from place to place, delivering his message. You stand at a crossroads. You can choose wisdom or you can choose destruction. The dragons chose destruction and it cost them everything. Learn from their mistake before it is too late. 20 years after he left Yonhwa Station, Taman received an unexpected message. It came through quantum communication channels encrypted with a code he recognized. Mirai's code. The message was simple. Come home. People are ready to listen now. He returned to Earth for the first time in 2 decades. The planet had changed. The scars of the recent war were healing. New cities rose from the ruins of old conflicts. Humanity was expanding faster than ever, claiming new worlds and building new colonies. But there was also something different in the air. A new movement had started, calling for restraint and wisdom in expansion. Young people who had grown up hearing stories about the glowing prophet were demanding different leadership. Mirai met him in a park in the heart of the new capital city. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were still sharp and intelligent. "You look exactly the same," she said. "Not a day older than when you left." "The dragon energy changes how I age," Taman explained. "I might live for centuries now. I do not know." They sat together on a bench and talked for hours. Mirai told him about the changes in human society, about the peace movements that had started because of his interventions, about the new generation of leaders who valued diplomacy over warfare, about the scientists who had started studying alternative energy sources instead of weapons. "You made a difference," she said. "People are listening now. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to change the course we were on." "Is it enough?" Taman asked. He felt the weight of the dragon memories pressing on him. He knew how fragile civilizations were, how easily good intentions could turn into disasters. "I do not know," Mirai admitted, "but it is more than we had before. That counts for something." She had arranged for him to speak at a gathering of world leaders, not an official government function, but an informal summit of people who actually made decisions. Presidents and corporate heads and military commanders and religious leaders all gathered to hear what the glowing prophet had to say. Taman stood before them in a simple conference room. He let his inner light shine, showing them what he had become. Then he shared with them what the dragons had shared with him. He showed them visions of the dragon civilization at its height, the beauty they had created, the wonders they had achieved, the peace they had known for thousands of years. Then he showed them the war, the escalation, the transformation, the end. "This is your future if you choose the path of endless expansion through force," he said. His voice carried harmonics that made every person in the room feel the truth of his words. "Not tomorrow, not next year, but eventually, you will reach a point where you must choose between restraint and annihilation. The dragons chose wrong. I carry their memories so that you might choose better." A military commander stood up, hostile. "You ask us to be weak, to stop expanding, to give up our advantage. That is not realistic. Other species will take what we do not claim." "I do not ask you to be weak," Taman replied calmly. "I ask you to be wise. Strength and wisdom are not opposites." The dragons were strong. They were the most powerful civilization in their corner of the galaxy. Their strength destroyed them because they lacked the wisdom to control it. "True power lies in knowing when not to use force," a corporate leader spoke next. "We have mouths to feed, resources to claim. We cannot stop expanding or our economy will collapse." "Then change your economy," Taman said. "The dragons built wonders with renewable energy and sustainable systems. Their technology is in my memory. I can teach you better ways to grow that do not require conquest and exploitation." A religious leader asked quietly, "Are you claiming to be some kind of god? A savior sent to guide us?" Taman shook his head firmly. "I am a soldier who wanted silence and found a dying civilization instead. I carry their memory, but I am not their master or yours. I am simply someone who has seen the future you are building and wants to show you another path. You can choose to listen or not. That is up to you." They talked for hours. Some were convinced. Some remained skeptical. Some were openly hostile. But they all listened. And that was more than Taman had hoped for. Over the following decades, things changed slowly. New laws were passed limiting weapons development. Peace treaties were signed with alien species that humanity had been preparing to fight. Research funding shifted from military applications to sustainable technology. It was not a revolution. It was a gradual shift in thinking, a slow turning away from the path that led to the dragon's fate. Taman continued his work, appearing where he was needed most. He stopped wars before they started. He shared dragon technology with scientists who promised to use it for peace. He taught a new generation of leaders to think beyond immediate gain and consider long-term consequences. Mirai published books about the dragons and their civilization. She became one of humanity's most respected xenologists. She never claimed special knowledge beyond what Taman shared with her, but her work helped spread the dragon's warning to millions of people who would never meet the glowing prophet in person. Admiral Doyen, old and retired, finally met with Taman again on Doyen's deathbed. "I chased you for 30 years, the old admiral said weakly. "Tried to capture you, tried to control you. I thought you were dangerous." "I am dangerous," Taman agreed. "I carry the power to destroy or create. That is why I must be careful with it. I understand now. What you were trying to do, what the dragons were trying to prevent." Doyen coughed. "I wasted my life fighting against you when I should have been fighting beside you." "You did what you thought was right," Taman said gently. "That is all anyone can do. And in the end, your opposition made me stronger. It forced me to find better ways to communicate. Thank you for that." Doyen died peacefully that night. Taman stayed with him until the end, giving the old warrior the respect he deserved. 50 years after he had accepted the dragon's gift, Taman stood once more in the ruins of Yanhua Station. The station had been abandoned decades ago, left to orbit the dead planet Yomra in eternal silence. He floated through the observation deck where he had first heard the dragon's song. The crater where the dragons had died was still there, a scar on the glass surface of the planet, but it was cold now, no light. No heat, no song, just memory. Taman felt the dragon consciousness stirring in his mind, the elder's voice, or maybe his own voice carrying the elder's thoughts. "You have done well, Taman of Earth. Our song continues through you." "Have I done enough?" Taman asked the empty space. "Is humanity safe now?" "No civilization is ever truly safe," the voice replied. "The choice between wisdom and destruction must be made again and again by every generation. But you have given your people a chance. You have shown them another way. That is all we could hope for." Taman thought about the changes he had witnessed, the wars that had not happened, the peace that had been chosen over conflict, the slow but steady shift toward a more thoughtful humanity. It was not perfect. Problems remained. But the path had changed. The future was different than it would have been. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you continue. For as long as you can. For as long as humanity needs the reminder. You are the living song now, Taman. You carry our warning and our hope forward. That is your purpose. That is your gift and your burden." Taman nodded slowly. He looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds humanity had reached and all the worlds they had yet to find. He thought about the choices that would come and the crises that would test whether people had truly learned the dragon's lesson. He would be there for those moments, walking through walls, glowing like a star, speaking with harmonics that carried 3 million years of memory. He would be the bridge between what humanity was and what it might become. The soldier who had sought silence had found instead an endless purpose. He had become something unique in the universe. Not human, not dragon, but something in between. A living reminder that choices matter, and that wisdom is harder than strength, but infinitely more valuable. He left Yanhua Station for the last time, and flew toward the nearest human colony. There was work to do. There would always be work to do. But for the first time since accepting the dragon's gift, Taman felt something like peace. The song had not ended. It had simply found a new voice, and it would continue as long as someone was there to sing it, carrying the warning across the years, hoping that each new generation would choose better than the last, somewhere in the void. If such a thing was possible for beings who had transcended into pure energy and then faded into nothing, the dragons rested. Their vigil was over. Their song lived on. And perhaps in whatever existence came after existence, they finally found the silence that Taman had once sought and never quite found again.